Hey guys, it's Goose here, and in this video we're going to be looking at my guitar, which is a Fender Custom Shop USA made D'aquisto Deluxe. But before we go into that, we're going to just talk about Jimmy D'Aquisto, the great luthier, and the amazing jazz guitarist Jim Hall, who I absolutely love. I mean, the thing about Jim Hall, which I really love, is his strumming. He'd strum. You don't really hear enough jazz guitarists strumming, really. That's it's all kind of the comping thing, or else it's trying to be overly sophisticated. And that's why my preference is for jazz guitarists like Bill Frisell, who would play some cowboy chords, which I think is fantastic. And he does a lot of Beatles sort of like John Lennon's Imagine, I think he does a beautiful version of, and Beach Boy stuff, and it's really nice. And a great guitarist like Julian Lage, young chap, again, he's playing solid body. So I think it's nice when jazz guitarists take it out of just a strict bebop sort of zone, but then again there's a beauty in the really strict hardcore bebop players. There's a beauty in that as well. So what am I saying? I don't know what I'm saying, but anyway, let's get back to talking about this guitar. And by the way, I don't really profess to be a jazz guitarist myself. I'm really a blues. Professionally, I'm a blues, blues and world music musician. I don't market myself as a jazz guitarist. In fact, I've got a jazz gig tomorrow here in London, but I actually class myself as one of the not so good jazz guitarists in London. But anyway, that aside, and that's not modesty, that's actually the truth. So let's get back to talking about this guitar. This particular guitar is I wanted one of these for many years, and because Fender D'aquisto made various models, and they made 3 models in Japan, which were the standard, elite and ultra. And these were great guitars, and I had an elite, really cool. Ultras were pretty rare because they have the solid spruce top. The elite has a spruce top, but it has, I think it has a ply back, maple back. And then the standard was a ply maple top and ply maple back. So that was kind of a cheap, and it had two shallow pickups. The elite had 1 shallow pickup, and the ultra had no pickups. Just you could have a floating pickup, obviously. And then after 1990, they tweaked the design a little bit, took the shallow pickup out of the elite model and put a basic humbucker in. And you can see Julian Lage using one of those later edition Japanese guitars, made around 1990. And then in 1994, Jimmy D'Aquisto turned up at Fender headquarters, the amazing luthier, and trained a couple of guys there, particularly Stephen Stern, and also Greg Fessler, who was known for making the Robin Ford models. But he trained Stephen and Greg how to make these arch tops. And then so Fender USA made in-house in their custom shop 3 models. One was this model, which was the cheapest one, which was a Fender D'aquisto Deluxe. And then they made a Fender D'aquisto Elite, but they only made 1 or 2 of those models. And then they made the Ultra. So I think they made maybe 50 of these and 50 Ultras. Okay, so around the world there's 50 of these models and 50 of the Ultra. The Ultra was the more high-end, solid back and sides and solid spruce top. Okay, ebony board. But this particular guitar came in 2 different versions. It came in a team built, so probably Greg Fessler and some other dudes would have built those ones. And then it came in a master built edition, which Stephen Stone would have built all by hand himself, this is one of those ones. And you can tell that because it says on the back of the headstock, Stephen Stone's signature. So they only made about 100 of these. And this is a master built one. The difference, not all of the master builts were one, because this is like a 1-piece ply. Most of the team built ones were 2-piece plies. But I mean, what's the difference between if it's a ply, it doesn't really make much difference if it's 2 pieces or not. But there was one, I have seen a master built with a split in the middle. So it's not the rule of thumb that the sort of 1-piece ones like this one were master built. But in all, there was 100 built by Fender, and like I said, 50 were the Deluxe model, these ones, and 50 were the more high-end Ultra model. But this is kind of probably, I have no idea what this would have cost, because this wasn't a team built, this was a master built one. So who knows if these commanded more money or what, who knows, I don't know. The price list doesn't actually tell you whether the master built ones were worth more. So that I do not know. Okay, but what's interesting about this is actually more similar to a Jim Hall signature guitar, the original Jimmy D'Aquisto Jim Hall guitar, than a Sadowsky, and I'm going to tell you why. So the main difference between this and the Sadowsky is this has got 20 frets, and the original Jimmy D'Aquisto Jim Hall had 20 frets. So the Sadowsky has 22 frets, so that's a bit different. Also, the Sadowsky has no block markers. It's just there's nothing on the fretboard, whereas the Jimmy D'Aquisto Jim Hall and this one, the Fender, has block markers. Okay, the Sadowsky and the Fender both have the kind of very simple one ply binding here. The Sadowsky has the overspray feature, which this doesn't have. So basically what that is Jim Hall wanted a more simpler design. So when Jimmy D'Aquisto sprayed the guitar, Jim Hall saw it and said, don't scrape back the binding, because that's what you normally do. You spray the guitar with nitro or poly, and then you scrape back the binding to reveal the binding. And this one has been scraped, so that's a feature. The original, like I said, the original Jim Hall guitar had a Diamond HB pickup, Guild pickup, gold. This one is routed for a normal humbucker, as is the Sadowsky. The Sadowsky has a DiMarzio, and this has a Seymour Duncan. So this is really nice, you know. I think if you're playing like more sort of George Benson sort of smooth jazz, so for that kind of vibe, it's really, really good for the sort of George Benson. You know, the pickup really does respond well to that kind of vibe. But the DiMarzio, actually, because I owned a Sadowsky, so that's one thing I want to tell you guys. I actually owned the Jim Hall Sadowsky for a while. A friend loaned it to me for a few months, and so I really got to know that guitar. This just feels a bit more kind of robust, a bit more, in a way, the Sadowsky feels a bit more delicate. The neck was thinner. This has got a bit of a chunky neck. The neck was thinner on the Sadowsky, and it felt a bit more fragile. This feels a bit more robust. And another thing about this is it's a little bit thicker than the Sadowsky. So it's not 3 inches. It's just a bit over 2 3/4. Sadowsky one is 2 3/4. Bear in mind that, you know, Jim Hall was playing the ES-175 for many years, and that was over 3 inches. Okay, so I'm wondering if this is the actual same size as the original Jimmy D'Aquisto Jim Hall guitar. So that could be interesting, because obviously Jimmy D'Aquisto trained Stephen Stern to build these guitars. So maybe he said, well, you know, when I built Jim Hall a guitar, it was this thickness and blah blah blah. But it features a great bridge tailpiece, which is sort of carved in ebony bridge, ebony buttons. So it's all those kind of appointments. The one thing I've kind of changed actually on this guitar, because it had pretty cheap tuners on this, and the Ultra and this one come with cheap tuners. The Ultra, because I think they ran out of these original. These were used on the Japanese versions of the Elite and the Ultra, but the American Ultra and the Deluxe have really cheap tuners. So I found the original Japanese tuners, sorry, these are German, but they were on the Japanese guitars. I found the original tuners, which are beautiful with the ebony buttons, and I sort of retrofitted these onto the guitar just to give it a bit of an upgrade. But all in all, this is a really, really beautiful sound. Especially, it's a bit more modern. I'd say this is a bit more modern sounding than the Sadowsky, maybe. I don't know. I mean, the Sadowsky is a very modern looking guitar actually, because it doesn't have any fret markers. But the finishes on them both are pretty much the same. I think this fares better in a band situation with a drummer, because with the Sadowsky I had problems with feedback. This one I don't. So this one sort of handles feedback much better than the Sadowsky. I don't know why that is. Maybe it was the particular Sadowsky one I had. But that one, you know, you couldn't get any volume on that guitar. It would just start feeding back. But this one behaves a lot better, you know. Not entirely, because it's obviously a hollow body guitar, but it seems to behave itself, you know. So yeah, this is a really nice guitar. It's great for playing, like I said, you know, for more bluesy, sort of what we call smooth jazz, which is kind of really my favourite style of jazz. And that's what it really excels at, I think. I think that maybe if you were playing, you know, more traditional bebop, then you might want to get a something like a Guild Artist Award, or you know, something like you know, something more traditional, like an L5 or something, you know. I think this is where this really works, is playing a little bit more modern music, that kind of funky stuff, you know. That sort of vibe, and this is where this guitar really comes in. And also, you know, George Benson, who's my favourite jazz guitarist, when he played the Montreal Jazz Festival, and he just playing was just, you know, he was physically, mentally, and he's musically just at the peak. And he didn't play one of his signature models, which was surprising. He played another model which had two humbuckers pickups. It had a 2 and 3/4 inch body, pretty similar to this. It was a 16-inch guitar, and I think the model name, I can't remember if it was FG 100 or something. I can't remember the model name. You can find it out. So he played something like this, very, very similar, blonde, you know, something very similar to this. And for me, that was this is my favourite concert by George Benson. And so this is kind of a guitar that looks just like that Ibanez guitar he played on that concert, and it's got the same sort of vibe about it. And so that's really why I kind of really gravitated towards this guitar. Like I said, I don't really consider myself a jazz guitarist per se, but I do play jazz. I've got a jazz gig in London tomorrow, like I said, and I shall be using this very guitar through one of my Filmer sound amps. And it's a very versatile guitar. I'll be playing bebop on it tomorrow. But like I said, you know, where it really, really excels is playing a little bit more modern jazz, like that kind of like 90s, you know, that sort of Larry Carlton, Larry Coryell, Lee Ritenour, that's the guy, Lee Ritenour's sort of smooth jazz. That's kind of really where this guitar, I think, if you were going to get one of these, that's really where you want to be sort of thinking to place this sort of sound, you know. Obviously you can change the pickup, but as it is. Yeah, and just to kind of compare it to the Sadowsky, I prefer to the Sadowsky, but that Sadowsky is a very, very good guitar, and it's a very good approximation of Jim Hall's guitar. Obviously, Roger Sadowsky knows what he's doing, but there are just interesting points about this. Has 20 frets, same as Jim Hall's, and the thickness. You know, that's another thing, because I've seen photos of Jim Hall's original Japanese D'aquisto, and it just looks a little bit bigger. It looks kind of this, you know, just a bit bigger than 2 3/4, but less than 3 inches, you know, so it looks kind of the same as this rather than the Sadowsky. So maybe this guitar here is closer to Jim Hall's D'aquisto than Roger Sadowsky's signature model. So just food for thought there, guys. See you in the next video. Take care.